Welcome. Aware, not a day, dumalang. Molo, sowabona. Hukandat, and a warm welcome to the Ndupo Knowledge Cast, the podcast where your curiosity meets insightful conversations. Today we're diving deep into the world of artificial intelligence AI, a field that's rapidly changing the world around us. You've sent us a collection of fascinating articles and research papers on this topic, and we're going to unpack them together to give you a clear, concise, and captivating understanding of where AI has been, where it stands now, and its trajectory.
It's going to be fascinating. AI has gone through such a whirlwind of evolution, and it's incredible to see how far we've come and the incredible potential that lies ahead, especially for a country like South Africa.
Okay, let's unpack this. We keep hearing AI everywhere we turn, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
It's not just about robots taking over the world, right?
You're absolutely right to point that out. Hollywood loves to sensationalize AI,
Right.
but the reality is far more nuanced and, dare I say, even more fascinating. AI, at its core, is a scientific field dedicated to building systems that mimic human intelligence. These systems are designed to learn from data, reason, and solve problems, essentially, to think like we do, but without the biological constraints.
So it's not about replicating the human brain exactly, but more about capturing its essence, its ability to learn and adapt.
Precisely. Think of it like this. We're trying to build a plane. We don't necessarily need to recreate a bird's flapping wings, but we need to understand the principles of aerodynamics, lift and thrust.
Right.
AI is similar. We're trying to understand the principles behind human intelligence and replicate those in a way that benefits humanity.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how did this whole AI thing even begin? Was it some secret government project in the 1950s?
Yeah.
I'm picturing men in lab coats huddled around glowing computers.
You're not far off with the lab coats and computers.
Right.
While the idea of artificial beings dates back centuries, the formal field of AI as we know it can be traced back to a workshop at Dartmouth College in 1956. A group of brilliant minds came together with this ambitious goal of creating machines that could think.
Wow.
It's interesting to think that something we consider so cutting edge actually has roots going back over half a century.
Dartmouth College, 1956.
Yeah.
That's surprisingly recent.
Uh-huh.
So what were they working on back then? What were the early goals and approaches in AI?
Well, those early pioneers were focused on things like problem solving, getting machines to understand language, and even robotics. They were really laying the groundwork for everything we're seeing today.
Okay.
One of the initial approaches they focused on was symbolic AI, where they essentially tried to teach computers to think using logic and symbols, much like we use mathematical equations to represent and solve problems.
So they were trying to teach computers to think almost like mathematicians. That's fascinating. Did that approach work well? What were its limitations?
It had its successes, especially in controlled environments like playing chess. Computers were able to follow pre-programmed rules and strategies to make decisions. But as you can imagine, the real world is messy and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Symbolic AI struggled when faced with uncertainty, like trying to predict the weather or diagnose a disease based on symptom situations where there's no one right answer.
That makes sense. So what did they do? Did they just give up on AI?
Not at all. They realized they needed a different approach, something that could handle the uncertainties of the real world. This led to a shift towards probabilistic models, with techniques like Bayesian networks taking center stage.
Okay, so what are probabilistic models and how are they different from the earlier symbolic AI approach?
Think of it this way. Instead of saying, if this, then that, with absolute certainty, probabilistic models deal with probabilities.
Oh.
They ask, given what we know, what is the likelihood of something happening?
Okay.
It's like medical diagnosis. Doctors don't just look at one symptom, they consider all the evidence and make a judgment call based on a probability.
So it's about weighing different possibilities based on available information. That sounds a lot more like how humans actually think, right?
Exactly. This shift towards probabilistic models was a major turning point in AI research, paving the way for the sophisticated systems we have today.
Right.
It allowed AI to tackle more complex, real-world problems with greater accuracy.
That makes sense. But it still feels like we're talking about the early days of AI.
Right.
When did things really start to take off? When did AI go from being an academic pursuit to something that's transforming our world?
You're right.
Yeah.
We're building up to that. The real game changer came with the rise of machine learning.
Yeah.
Specifically, a subset of it called deep learning.
Okay.
This is where AI truly started to unlock its potential.
Here's where it gets really interesting. All right, let's dive into this. What is machine learning, and what's so special about deep learning? What sets them apart from those earlier approaches to AI?
Imagine teaching a child to ride a bike.
Okay.
You wouldn't give them a lecture on physics and expect them to hop on and ride flawlessly.
Right.
They learn through experience, through trial and error.
Right.
That's essentially what machine learning is all about.
Okay.
It's giving computers the ability to learn from data without being explicitly programmed for every scenario.
So instead of giving the computer all the answers, we give it the tools to figure things out independently, learning from its mistakes along the way.
Exactly. Now, deep learning takes this a step further by using artificial neural networks, which are loosely inspired by the structure of the human brain.
Okay.
These networks are made up of layers upon layers of interconnected nodes or neurons that process information.
So instead of just learning from data in a linear way, deep learning allows AI to process information in a more complex, interconnected way, similar to our brains.
Precisely. And this is where those incredible breakthroughs in speech recognition, image analysis, and even things like self-driving cars are coming from. Deep learning has been a complete game changer for the field of AI.
Wow.
And it's this deep learning that's at the heart in most AI applications you interact with today, like those eerily accurate recommendations you get on your favorite streaming platform.
Right.
Think about it. The system learns your preferences over time and suggests things you might like, even if you hadn't explicitly searched for them.
That's amazing. So with deep learning, AI is not just processing information, it's learning, adapting, and even making decisions independently based on the data it's been trained on. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it? But it's the reality we're living in, and it's only going to get more incredible from here.
Wow.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about the two main camps within machine learning: discriminative and generative models.
Okay.
These are two fundamentally different approaches to AI.
Two different approaches.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the difference between discriminative and generative AI?
Think of discriminative AI like a seasoned detective. It excels at analyzing evidence and making judgments based on patterns. For example, your email inbox uses this type of AI to filter spam. It's learned to recognize patterns and spam messages and can quickly sort them from your important emails.
So it's all about pattern recognition and classification. What about generative AI? What's its superpower?
Generative AI is the artist in the AI world. Give it some input, and it doesn't just analyze, it creates something entirely new. It's like giving an artist a paintbrush and some colors. They can create a near infinite number of images from those basic tools.
That's fascinating. Generative AI actually creates things. Can you give us some real-world examples of this?
Think about those AI-generated images you might have seen online, or even AI composing music. There are even AI systems designing new protein structures for drug discovery. Those are all examples of generative AI at work.
It's like AI is becoming a creator in its own right. That's both exciting and a little bit daunting. It makes you wonder what else AI will be capable of as these technologies continue to evolve.
It certainly does. And this brings us to a crucial point. We're living through not one, but two major turning points in AI history.
Two turning points. You have my attention.
The first, as we've touched upon, was the advent of deep learning. This really revolutionized the field, propelling AI to new heights of capability and performance. The second turning point, the one we're in the midst of right now, is the emergence of this generative AI we've been discussing.
Okay, so deep learning opened the door, and now generative AI is taking us on a wild ride through that door. What makes generative AI such a significant turning point, though? It seems like an extension of deep learning in a way, isn't it?
It is, but it's also a fundamental shift in how we think about AI. Before, AI was primarily about analyzing existing data and making predictions. With generative AI, we're talking about creating something entirely new, something that didn't exist before.
That's an incredible thought, AI as a creator. Could you give us some specific examples of how this second inflection point, this rise of generative AI, is playing out in the real world?
One striking example is in the field of language processing. We've gone from basic chatbots to AI models like GPT, which can generate incredibly human quality text, translate languages, write different kinds of creative content, and answer your questions in an informative way, even if they are open-ended, challenging, or strange.
It's like having access to an infinitely knowledgeable assistant who can communicate with us in a way that feels natural and intuitive.
Exactly. And this potential extends far beyond language. Generative AI is revolutionizing fields like drug discovery, material science, and even art and music. The possibilities are truly limitless.
Limitless possibilities. It's an exciting thought, but it also comes with a sense of responsibility, wouldn't you say? If AI is becoming this powerful, we need to make sure it's used for good, especially in a country like South Africa, which faces unique challenges.
You've hit the nail on the head. As AI becomes more sophisticated, it's crucial that we address its limitations and harness its power for the benefit of all South Africans.
Absolutely. So where do we start? How can we use AI to positively impact South Africa in particular?
Let's take the example of language processing, which we just touched upon. Imagine AI helping to break down language barriers in a country with 11 official languages. AI could be used to make information more accessible, connect to people across cultures, and even preserve our rich linguistic heritage.
That's a powerful example. AI could play a key role in fostering understanding and communication in our diverse nation.
Precisely. And this is just one example. We could talk about how AI could be used to improve healthcare outcomes, enhance education, or even address issues like poverty and unemployment.
Those are all critical areas where AI could make a real difference. But how do we ensure that AI benefits all South Africans?
It starts with being mindful of the data we use to train these AI systems. We need to ensure that the data reflects our country's diversity and doesn't perpetuate existing inequalities. It also means investing in AI education and skills development so that all South Africans can participate in this technological revolution.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we develop, deploy, and regulate it to ensure that it benefits everyone in our society.
Exactly. And it requires a collaborative effort from policymakers, researchers, businesses, and citizens to shape a future where AI empowers South Africa.
Well said. It's clear that AI has the potential to be a game changer for South Africa, but it's up to us to steer it in the right direction. Now, we've talked a lot about the potential benefits, but what about the potential downsides?
Well, one of the things that a lot of people are concerned about is the impact on jobs.
Right.
And particularly in South Africa, that's something we really need to think about carefully.
That's definitely something on many people's minds. With AI automating tasks, how do we ensure that it doesn't worsen our already challenging unemployment situation?
Yeah, it's a big concern. I mean, we're already facing high unemployment.
Right.
And if AI comes in and automates even more jobs, it's easy to imagine that making things worse.
Right.
But it's not necessarily a simple case of AI taking jobs away. It's more nuanced than that.
So it's not just about job losses. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, throughout history, when we've seen new technologies emerge, what usually happens is
Right.
some jobs get automated, but then new opportunities arise as well.
Right.
For example, when computers came along,
Yeah.
the demand for typists went down.
Yeah.
But then you had this whole boom in software development and IT support roles.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a one-to-one replacement. It's more like a shifting landscape.
So instead of AI taking jobs, it's more about AI changing what skills are needed in the workplace.
Exactly.
Oh.
And I think that's something we need to prepare for.
So it's about preparing our workforce for this evolving job market. What steps can we take in South Africa to ensure our people are equipped for this AI-driven future?
Well, education is going to be key.
Okay.
We need to focus on equipping people with the skills that will be in demand in an AI-powered economy.
Right.
So things like STEM education, data science, coding, those are all going to be crucial. We also need to encourage lifelong learning.
Right.
Because the pace of technological change is so rapid that people will need to constantly adapt and update their skills throughout their careers.
It sounds like a multi-pronged approach is needed, focusing on both traditional education and continuous learning opportunities.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's not enough to just focus on one or the other. We need a comprehensive strategy.
That makes sense. It's about bridging the gap between what's taught in classrooms and what's required in the real world. Now, beyond the job market, are there other potential downsides we should be considering?
Yeah, definitely. I think another big concern is the potential for AI to worsen existing inequalities.
Right.
South Africa, as you know, has a long history of inequality.
Right.
And if we're not careful, AI could end up exacerbating those problems.
That's a critical point. How can we ensure that AI development and deployment are inclusive and benefit all South Africans, irrespective of their background?
Well, I think it all comes down to data.
Okay.
The data that we use to train these AI systems is crucial.
Right.
If the data itself is biased, then the AI system that learns from that data is also going to be biased.
Right.
And that can lead to all sorts of unfair and discriminatory outcomes.
So, for instance, if an AI used in loan applications is trained on data that reflects historical disparities in loan approvals based on race or socioeconomic status, it could unfairly disadvantage certain groups.
Exactly. So we need to be very mindful of the data that we use. We need to make sure that it's representative of the population as a whole,
Right.
and that it doesn't perpetuate existing biases. And I think that's where diversity in the tech industry comes in.
So diversity in the tech industry isn't just about representation. It's about building better, fairer technology for everyone.
Exactly, because if you have a more diverse group of people working on these technologies, they're more likely to be attuned to these issues of bias and fairness,
Right.
and more likely to build systems that are beneficial to everyone.
This has been an incredibly insightful discussion. As we wrap up, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to keep in mind as they navigate this world being reshaped by AI?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that AI is going to have a profound impact on South Africa.
Right.
It has the potential to solve some of our most pressing problems, but it also poses some serious challenges.
Right.
And I think the more informed we are about AI, how it works, its potential benefits and risks,
Right.
the better equipped we'll be to harness its power for good.
It's about becoming informed citizens, capable of engaging in conversations and decisions that will shape the future of AI in our country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not something that should be left just to the experts.
Right.
This is something that affects all of us.
That's a powerful message to end on. It's been a fascinating deep dive into the world of AI, from its history to its potential to reshape South Africa's future.
Yes, it has.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been my pleasure.
To our listeners, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and engaging. We encourage you to continue exploring the ever-evolving world of AI. And until next time on the Aduba Knowledge Cast, keep those questions coming and stay curious.